According to the Rambam, proper Beit Knesset has to have 12 windows, and the windows should be open all the time when you...
Even in the winter?
Yeah, very happy to show that.
I don't think it'll make any difference.
So this evening we are learning the Teichen of the Dvar Malchus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach from Parshas Vayishlach. Oh, just one second. Let's leave that there. But I have something to give you, but could you come around? Can we sort of turn things off for a moment? If you can give these to Beryl, he said he wouldn't mind, so he probably, he'll be sorry that he said that. It's not very much, it's just a few lines.
Okay.
I did it big, that's why we'll fill up.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Thanks, very good. And thanks for that, Shakur. So, yeah, leave the changes there. Great. Wonderful. Thanks for your square. So we're learning the Teichen of the Dvar Malchus of Parshas Vayishlach, which was said in the year Tovshin and Beis. And this evening is Yom Chamishi Balayla Oyer Yud Gimel, Erev Shabbos Yud Gimel, Kislev, Toshin Ayin Ches, and the learning is taking place in the base Knesset, Tzemach Tzedek, Sheba Ir Atika, Ir Chodesh Tsfat. When the Rebbe said this Sikha, then Yud Tes Kislev came out on Yom Shlishi. That's to say, Yom Shlishi of Parshas Vayishlach. And the Shabbos before that was Tes Zayin Kislev. And that's preceded by Friday, which is Tes Vav Kislev. And it means that Thursday was Yud Dalet Kislev. And we're going to see that these things have a certain significance when I get to what we're going to talk about. And this year, it's different. This year, Yud Dalet Kislev is Shabbos, and so Yud Tes Kislev comes out on Thursday. The way it was then, when the Rebbe said this, he said that's the way it was the first time when the Alter Rebbe was in prison. He was let out because then Yud Tes Kislev fell on Yom Shlishi, and it's well known that the Alter Rebbe wrote in the famous letter that he wrote to Reb Baruch Mezbazher and also to Reb Levi Bedicheva. And he told them that on Yom Shlishi, on the third day of the week, well, that's a Yom Shel Hukpal B'Bitoev. It's brought on the words Ki Tov in the Torah twice about Yom Shlishi. And when he was saying the Pasuk in Tehillim of Potter B'Shalom Nafshi, so then he got out, then they came and told him that he was being let out. So we see that occurred on Yom Shlishi, and that's the way it was when the Rebbe said this Sikha. So the Rebbe said, if it falls out like that, then the Shabbos Tes Zayin B'Kislev, then that has several special points or very elevated points about it. Yeah, Erev Shabbos, that means that Friday, which is a hachona to Shabbos, the Gemara brings in the sector of Vayishlach, right near the beginning, that Misha Torach be'erev Shabbos, Yeichel b'Shabbos. That if you make an effort on Erev Shabbos, then you have what to eat on Shabbos. Because Shabbos doesn't prepare itself food on Shabbos, you can't prepare food. So you have to be Torach, you have to make an effort and, strain yourself a bit on Erev Shabbos in order that you should have Shabbos. Well, what that implies, that the whole function of Erev Shabbos is to be like a preparation for Shabbos. And we find that in many halachas that refer to Erev Shabbos in its function as a preparation and a making ready for the coming of Shabbos. It follows from that B'Tes Vov Kislev Sheboi HaYoreach Meir B'Mloi HaDorei V'Yom Shlishi Habo HaMasayim Esmartis HaShavua HaShaychas LeShabbos She'ovro Chal B'Yutes Kislev Chag HaGeula of Admor HaZochim. So the Rebbe says it follows that on the day of Erev Shabbos, which was the 15th of Kislev, that's the day when the moon reaches its fullest point. That is the day of the full splendor of the oyer of the Levana, al Kaponim, of the light of the moon, and that prepares for Shabbos. And then according to halacha, you can make Havdalah all the way up till Tuesday, till the end of Tuesday, if for some reason you want to make immediately on way to Shabbos. Well, from that we see that Shabbos has an effect. And according to the Arizal, it's brought down that Shabbos has an effect from the Shabbos where we are now, for example, for 3 full days. And then it gives way to the coming of the next Shabbos. So from Wednesday, you're already living with the oil of the next Shabbos that's shining, as it were, in retrospect, shining back. Mamela says the Rebbe follows that Yutes Kislev, which is the Tuesday, that's still under the effect of this particular Shabbos, which means that it's still under the effect of the Erev Shabbos, which prepared it, which is the Yom of the Miloi Halavon, the fullness of the moon. However, we're going to see that there's a difference between the fullness of the moon and Yutes Kislev, because Yutes Kislev is already after the fullness of the moon, because the moon immediately after the 15th, it starts going downward. Yeah, and he says Chag HaGeula of the Alter Rebbe is, we're taught by the Rebbe Rashab, that is Rosh Hashanah Chassidus. That's as it were, the new year of the whole union of Chassidus. And so that is still under the influence of this Shabbos, which is on Tes Zayin, and the Erev Shabbos is Milu Halavona. So he says, Yesh L'Tzayim, Shegam B'Shona Shebo Yotod Moazochim Ma'izorei, or Ma'izorei, that when the Alter Rebbe went out from prison was also exactly the same. Kaviyas, just like it was at the time of this Sikha. Kol Dover Ba'ilam, says the Rebbe, everything is Bashgacha Pratis. How much more so something to do with the Rosh Hashanah, Chassidus, and something to do with Shabbos Kodesh and Erev Shabbos Kodesh, then bevadai that all those inyanim are very precise hashgacha pratis. Therefore, it would follow that we're required, says the Rabbi, to understand why it is that the Yutes Kislev Mekabel Birchosei Mishabes Tes Zayin Kislev. Why is it Davke that Yutes Kislev, which comes out on Yud Tes of the month, is getting its bracha from Tes Zayin? Because every day of the week gets a bracha from Shabbos, and particularly Yom Shlishi is still connected to the Shabbos, so we pointed out. HaMavoreches es hayomim shoracharav kiyadua, that Tes Zayin Kislev is giving a bracha to all the days after it. V'hachona l'Shabbos, and the preparation for that begins on Erev Shabbos, which is Tesvav. And Tesvav is the middle of Halavana. So the Rebbe said we have to learn what do all those things teach us. The first of all, we have the middle of Halavana on Tesvav, then we have Shabbos has already moved away from that, and nonetheless it gives a bracha to Yud Tes Kislev, which is still connected to it, Halakhet. Benegir Yud Tes Kislev, it says the Rebbe, there's a surprising question occurs in reference to the day of Yud Tes Kislev and also Chanukah. We'll see the same question applies to Chanukah. And that is that the remainder of the Chagim on the Jewish calendar, for example, Pesach and Sukkot, for example, they come out on the 15th of the month. They come out exactly when the moon has reached what would appear to be its highest point. And that's when Pesach and Sukkot are. And Shavuos, Lamashal, is even earlier than that. It's on the 6th day. But Shavuos are not according to a date. Shavuos is according to 50 days after the Kol Noima, the Sfiras Oima. So Shavuos comes out according to exactly when you started counting the Oima. But it so happens that is early in the month. It's in the first week of the month of Shavuot. So we see then that these days all come out either on the 15th or before the 15th. That's the time, at that particular period, leading up to the 15th, and including the Shleimas of the 15th, at that particular period, the Yoreah, which is similar to Yidden, it's well known that Yidden are compared in several places to the Yoreah, and the Gemara brings in Masechta Sukkah that Yidden are different than all the other peoples of the world, that all other peoples count their time in months and years according to the sun, and Yidden count according to the moon. That's a sign that Yidden are intimately connected with the moon. So if we're going to say that all these things and all the Yom Tovim occur prior to the fullness or including the fullness, that means also that Yidden must have an intimate relation to that. There must be something very key in how that affects Yidden. So the Rebbe says the thing which makes that, which is so typical of that particular time, including the 15th, is that the moon is going all the time in a form of growing and expansion. It's not like that. It happens on a date when the moon is already the moon is already getting less, and it's being covered, albeit gradually, but it's going down. The highest point in Gilad, Teres Achsidas, and Rosh Hashanah, which is called by the Frierdiker Rebbe in the famous letter, the Chag HaChagim, the Chag of all the Chagim, the Davke occurs on a date when it's already after the Milui Levana and the Levana is already going down. So the Rebbe said that's also true of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is even later. It's another 6 days later. Yeshna Shaila Doma. Meila Purim. Once again, Purim comes out on Yud Dalet and Tesbo. So Purim sort of chaps around, you know. Purim manages to fit it. It comes out on the 14th and the 15th. Of a Madua Hanukkah, which is such a central and great festival, when I get to Mesiras Nefesh of Yidden, what they're similar to the Lavona. For close Indian, Yiddishkeit should be at a time when the moon is right close to its complete coverage and its disappearance. So the Rebbe says that these questions lead us to the decision that we have to understand what is the reason for the Miyut Halavana. And also, what sort of a connection does that have with Yidden? So that introduces, or that brings us to a very significant switch and change in our whole way of viewing this phenomenon that the moon goes up and then it immediately after Tesbov it starts going down and becoming covered. The way, even in Shulchan Aruch, Yerodea, the way normally, when I say normally, the way that has been interpreted by many great authorities is that on the first day of the month, all the way up to the 15th, the moon is getting closer to the sun, and therefore it's getting more light from the sun, and at the point where it reaches its full, as it were, union with the sun, it has its full light. And after that, it's as it were going away from the sun. And since it's going away from the sun, then its light is going down. It's becoming less close to the... something all right?
Whatever you want to do, go ahead.
It's not coming close to the sun anymore. Therefore, it loses its light. It's going away. So the Rebbe is going to introduce here a whole new approach, and he's going to say that exactly the opposite can be argued. And not only can be argued, but that's the way the Alter Rebbe brings in his Siddur. There's a mimer in Shar Rosh Chodesh there where the Alter Rebbe says that it's really different. It's really everything occurs differently, and the Rebbe Rashab also has a mimer about it where he deals in this concept at some detail, and that is that instead of saying that the first 15 days of the month the moon is coming closer to the sun, what we're going to claim is exactly the opposite, that the moon is going further away from the sun, and that's why it's got full light. However, after the 15th of the month, the moon makes a turn and starts becoming closer to the sun. And as she becomes closer to the sun, then her light drops. And then the light starts going down. So that doesn't make any sense. If I'm getting further away, why should my light go up? And if I'm coming nearer, why should my light be negated? And so the Rebbe says that also, if that's the case, then when we number the days of the month, if we're going to say that the moon is really going down after then that should be reflected in the days of the month. We should count 15, and then we should start going backwards, as it were, and starting small numbers again after the 15. if we're going to say that the sun actually goes away and goes down. But we don't. On the contrary, we find that we just keep counting, and each number that we count has got some good significance. For example, take Yud Zayin. Yud Zayin is B'gematria Toiv. Yud Zayin indicates Toiv. Yud Ches is Chai. Yud Tes has got something to do with Chava's name. She's B'gematria Yud Tes, and that's a Miloy of a certain shame with the whole thing. And then Kof is the first letter of Kesser, and Kof Aleph, and Kof Beis, and Kof Gimel. If you really look for Dikdukim, you can find, and Kof Daled is also a word Chadkoid, which means it's connected with Elul, something Chadkoid Shim Shoshaya, and Kof Hey is already Koi Suvarakhu is B'nai Yisrael. So all the days keep going up, and they gain a powerful spiritual remnants in them, each number that is going on. So the Rebbe said the fact that that is the case tends to indicate that the moon is not suffering by going into the second half of the month, but on the contrary, something is happening that it's increasing. So ask yourself the question, if it's increasing, then why is the light going down? So what the Rebbe wants to tell us is something that it goes like this. Let's take the concept of a mashpia and a makabel. So the sun is like a mashpia, and the moon is the makabel, because the moon doesn't have any light of its own. It gets all of its light from the sun. So the sun is a very powerful, always light figure, and it's the mashpia, and the moon is the makabel. So the Rebbe said, if you're an emes of makabel from a mashpia, then he said, Koi, that you're near the mashpia, you don't give off light. Because since you're by the mashpia, you're being makabel only from the mashpia. And there's an expression in the Gemara, B'neged Yisavaheta, Aidi, the Torid Lamivla, Leipoli, that since you're so busy taking in, you don't give anything out. But when you get further away from the mashpia, and then people say, well, listen, what did you hear from the mashpia? Then you start giving off light. And the further you get away, the more confident you feel in giving light. But if you're right alongside the mashpia, you're afraid to give light. So the Rebbe said from that it follows that if the moon is all the time increasing its light, it's really going further away from the mashpia. That's an amazing idea. So the Rebbe said, if on the second half of the month its light is going down, he said that means that the moon is actually approaching the mashpia and getting closer to the Eibishter of the sun, which is the mashpia. And therefore its light gets less because it's being close and being connected to the mashpia. And so therefore its light goes down, but its value literally is going up because it's nearer the mashpia. So therefore the days of the month are going progressively and significantly upward. So it's absolutely amazing. That's not enough. Oh, that's not enough. That would be already a good way of explaining the phenomenon. However, the Rebbe says that there's a much deeper significance to the whole thing, and that is that the sun gives off light. So you have what's called the Etzem HaShemesh, and the light is like a radiation, or what we call in Chassidus a ha'ora bilvad, which is going off from the sun. So normally speaking, somebody who observes or is makabel from the shemesh, he's aware of the light which is coming to him, or the actual shemesh itself is hidden from him. He doesn't really have a direct busyness with it, so we could say that the etzem shemesh is behelim, but the ha'ora which is going off in the shemesh, that is begalui. You follow? Helen Begalui is the Mashpia and the Ha'ora going off and on. However, the Rebbe Rashab writes in that Maimah, which we brought down before, that's only Benegia to, as it were, the Ha'ora which goes off for the sake of another entity that he's lighting up with the Ha'ora. But if we take the Mashpia himself, then he sees it the opposite. As far as he's concerned, the Ha'ora is nothing. The Ha'ora is like Choshech, and his essence, that's as it were the emissaire existence of light. That's the emissaire. And it's not only light, but it's the very essence of the source of light. That's by the Mashpia. So it follows that if you become close to the Mashpia, and you really become close to him, then you begin seeing it his way. And what happens is that the light becomes insignificant by you, and the whole essence of the Mashpia, that's what's important. And the closer you get to him, the more you become affected by his presence and his very essence. And Mamela, you forget about the light and you're given over to the Etzem. Mamela said, the Rebbe, that's what's happening to the moon in the second half of the month. In the second half of the month, the moon is moving closer, not according to the old Sphara, that it's moving the other way. On the contrary, it's moving closer to the very essence of the sun. Mamela, it's busy with the presence of the sun, and the light is already what we might call irrelevant. And therefore the light sort of gradually dies down and becomes less significant in what we might call the eyes of the Makabah. It no longer has any, because the Makabah is approaching the Mashpia. So the Rebbe said, that's great, that's tremendous. And, however, that's not yet the full perfection that can be achieved. He said there's another level which can be achieved. And that is that it's brought down in Madrashi Chazal that between the 14th and the 15th, now on the 15th we said that's when the disk of the moon is full of light, right? That's when it becomes full. 14th is like just before that it's going to occur. So the Medrash says that in the 14th already, and everybody knows what the 14th is on this particular set, is that on the 14th there occurs a very fascinating thing. The Levana is lacking, the disk of the Levana is lacking its full illumination. On the 14th, running towards the 15th, whatever was lacking is already filled up. And therefore the word Yud, the two letters, Yud Daled, they make the word die. And die means enough. Which means that already on the 14th, before we get to the 15th, you've already filled up the discourse of the Levana, it's already full, and there's no pagam anymore. However, says the Rebbe, that just the fact that there's no pagam, there's no lacking anymore, that doesn't mean shleimus. Shleimus means that when you're not only not lacking anymore, but you've moved up to a new perfection that you didn't have before. That means that something is really new is happening to you. So therefore, said the Rebbe, it appears from that Medrash that on the 15th, the moon becomes not only just the disk of the moon doesn't have any stains on it anymore, or lack anymore, but the disk of the moon becomes, as it were, fulfilled in its fullest possible light. And the reason for that is that we're already moving close to the Etzem. We're starting this whole process of moving close to the Etzem Mashpia. And so therefore, whatever is needed in light is able to reach its full perfection, because the moon goes up a step. It's not only full, but it's full in a newness that it never had before. And that keeps increasing, and getting more profound and deeper as the days go by after the 15th, until it reaches a point that it becomes so close to the Mashpia that it's completely and utterly batel, how do you call it? Absolute. So the Rebbe said, Im Kain, it's interesting for us to work out what happens at the beginning of the 15th, according to the Medrash. What's this new, as it were, Shlema that occurred? So the Rebbe says there's a pasuk in Yeshaya Hanavi. Well, it's interesting, that pasuk is in chapter 30, Lamed. Well, that's the last day of the month, by the way. Pasuk Kovov. It happens to be the 26th pasuk. You know. But the Rebbe mentions the thing that Kovov is Gematria, the Shem Havayim. So, what does that pasuk tell us? That pasuk says that when Moshiach will come, then the moon is going to be like the sun. That the light of the moon is going to be exactly like the light of the sun, like it was before the Yerida. In other words, like it was in the 7 days of creation, that then the moon and the sun were all exactly, and they were on one level, and they were Dover Echad, like they were like one thing. And that's why it's brought down in the Gemara, Masechta Chulin, that the moon sort of blew the whole thing, and it complained. It said, there can't be two that have one Keser. You have to have two separate Kesarim for two kings, which means that the Abish wanted they should have one Keser, which means that they were absolutely equal. So if we're going to go back to that, when Moshiach comes, the moon and the sun are going to be absolutely equal. So the Rebbe says, what does it mean they're going to be absolutely equal? So he said, everything we've said up till now, even if we're going to say that the moon is coming closer to the sun, well, that still implies like that one is a mashpia and one is a makabel. And that's a very high level, but there's an even higher level, which we have to say that begins immediately after Tzfat happening, and it moves all the way through, and just before the Levana gets close, it reaches its fullness. On the contrary, the finishing of the process is not like a going down, it's a going up, that the moon and the sun are going to become absolutely equal. They're going to become one perfect shleimus, beyachad. And since they're one perfect shleimus beyachad, then that's going to be like it was before the miyutei areo. Before the whole thing happened, that was like it was in Shivas Yemei Braces, before the miyutei areo occurred. And that means that they've got one crown for both of them together. If you've got one crown for both of them together, then that means that they reach together now, the sun and the moon become batel to an even higher madrega than themselves. They become batel to the very essence of the Eibishter. You follow? And take into account that the Yidden are also all involved in this. That means that Yidden are also going through this whole process, which means that Davkit towards the end of the month, that, on the contrary, that's when Yidden had occurred forming a new relationship with the Eibishter, so much so that Kabiyoho, they and the sun, which is the idea of the source of light, they and the source of light become like one thing together. In other words, that Kabiyoho, it's also nilmas in a piece of the Parshas Shavua, but I can't sort of go into it, that Yidden and the Eibishter become like one thing. So you might say, wait a minute, you want to become one thing with the Eibishter? So it's brought down in the Zohar HaKodesh that Oiraisa v'Kutshabrichu v'Yisrael kul echad, that the Yidden and the Eibishter are all one thing. So Kaviohu, that's what happened. At so Yud Tes Kislev is the beginning of this program. That's a few days after Tesvav, and there's also, like we said, the Yud Tes is a gematria of Chava, I think it is. I just slipped my mind that particular point.
The Milui.
Yeah, and so that's a very important like day or point in the movement of the whole thing in its own right. But what's happening is that Yud-Tes Kislev is like at the beginning of the whole process. It's setting the line now that we're moving up to absolute union with the Mashpia. The Mila of Hanukkah is that it's only a few days away from the Siyum, from Lamed, which means that it's an even higher union in that regard. And therefore, the second time that the Alter Rebbe was let out, the Rebbe brings it down in the Sikha. The second time that the Alter Rebbe got, he was put in prison again, you know that, was on Hanukkah. It was dark in the days of Hanukkah. And in Hanukkah Gufa, you had the 5th day of Hanukkah. Well, that means that you're really very close to, to the siyum of the whole Inyan. It comes out a revolutionary new idea, even of what's written in the Alter Rebbe Siddur. Because the Alter Rebbe says that the moon is moving closer, but he's still talking about a mashpia and a makabel. The Rebbe says that the ultimate purpose and the ultimate perfection of this whole thing is that the mashpia and the makabel should become one thing, biyachad. And then they will be bottled, ligavid the atzmas, and that is the whole purpose of the movement, and it's an ongoing process aiming at that absolute oneness of the mashpia and the makabel. So it's already like happening on Yud-Tes Kislev. On Hanukkah, it's almost as it were the completion, but the whole thing is there in Yud-Tes Kislev, that the two are gradually moving towards absolute unity, and that's why it is that Yud-Tes Kislev comes out after the Tes-Vov. And so the Rebbe says that's got a special shaykhs to Kislev, even more than another month. And he says, why? Because Kislev is what we call Matan Torah, of Pnima Satorah. The Rebbe Rashab brings it down in some of both. That it's the Matan Torah. And that's the 3rd month of the winter. The 3rd month of the summer is Sivan, and that's the time of Matan Torah, of Nigla Torah. So the Rebbe said, what's the difference between them? The Rebbe said that in Matan Torah was like it's called, relatively speaking, erosin. Erosin means, how do you call it, an engagement. It's not yet complete Nisuyan. Complete Nisuyan is only going to be when Mashiach comes. But it's a very close union. But nonetheless, it's like still a mashpia and a makabel. Even though Matan Torah was a tremendously high union in the union of Hashem with Yidden, but nonetheless, we could say it's a union of mashpia and makabel. Therefore, in the summer months, the main thing is the light of the sun. And therefore, the light of the sun is hotter and it has more effect, and it causes the crops to grow and all sorts of things. It's like a mashpia and a makabel. However, in Kislev, says the Rebbe, it's a deeper relationship. Why? Because in Kislev, it's takim milmatala maila. On Matan Torah, it all happened from above down. It all came mainly from the Eivester. However, Kislev is in the winter. So it's brought down in the Kisvei Arizal that the months of the winter are harder. Why? Because it's going Malmatala Milo. It's all the effort of the makabel to come back to the Mashpia. At the months of the summer, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, Hashem came down and He gave. But in the winter months, you got to find the Hashem yourself. So the Rebbe says that it contains it on Kislev. That's the effort of the 3rd month of the winter, and that indicates. And 3rd is the Tiferet, a very high level. Or that indicates a tremendous hatzlocha on the part of the Avodah Davke Mil Matala Lamaila, and therefore that's able to reach a deeper level And that leads to this connection in a way that you become like one with the Mashpia. Not just that there's a Mashpia and a Makabel, but Hashem values that so much that He takes you up and you unite with Him. Yeah, Mamish one, and you become like both together, and then it's Keser Echad, L'Shneihem. Then the Eibishter gives what He wanted to do at the beginning. He gives a Keser to both of them together, and that's a very high level of Atzmusi is Barak, Kaviyachim. Of Amela, that's a greatness, Baklav of Kislev, and that's the Indian of Yutet's Kislev coming out Davke in the months which are, coming out Davke after 15th of the month. And Chanukah coming out, and the release of the second time of the Alter Rebbe, which is really like the climax of his whole release, as a one-on. There was still a leftover from Yiddish Kislev that carried over in the second, and on the contrary, it was very, very sharp in the second arrest. But the final freedom of the Alter Rebbe was Daki and Chanukah. Daki on the 5th day of Chanukah. That's like the union of the two together. Or that's the two of them, and they become united together, and their mamshech, Keser, Atzmusi is Barak, and that unites both of them together. That's the greatness. So the Rebbe said that's also the Mila Kislev. If you take Kislev, it's Case and then Lamed Vav. That's the word Kof Samach and then Lamed Vav. That's Kislev. So the Rebbe said Case indicates like a covering or a Kisui. Lamed Vav is the midas, how they are Begiloi. 6 times 6 is 36. And most of the ego of the midas is 6, according to the Zohar Code. So 6 times 6, 36. And also Eila, the word Eila, which is Gilui, Revelation, that's 6 times 6. So the Rebbe said you got case and you got coverage and Gilui, all having become one. So the Rebbe said, what does that mean? That case is only case legavi the ha'ora of a legavi the etzem, it's not case. That's the helam of the etzem himself. And he doesn't see that to be helam. And the gilui, that's the ha'ora, is that they join up together and they become one. And that's like the makabel and the mashpia joining up and becoming one. And then there's nimsha, and that's why Kislev is such a tremendously high month. The Rebbe said, therefore, it's one on the great mile of Chodesh Kislev. Now that's the union of the Mashpia and the Makabel, in the way they all become one thing. Kislev, it's all one Indian, and that's mitzad the Hamshocha or the Gilim of the Atmas at that particular time. So, how does the old thing have it in English? I think that's pretty good going. So then the Rebbe never finishes. So then the Rebbe says that's also reflected in the Parshas Shavua. And the Rebbe said that Yaakov Avinu, he in Beis Lavan, he had to do with what's called Birurim. So the Rebbe said that Birurim is what happened after the Miyut Lavona, after the Eibishter sent the Lavona down and made her small. Then the Avodah was in order to be Mavar of the world, because the Miyut Lavona came into the Shviras Akadim, the Toyu. And that had to be correct. So the Rebbe said all the time of the Golos, we've been working on that. And that's the great measure, the reason that the whole life of a man is built on how much birurim, what he's got to be mavara, and everyone's got a particular birur, and he's got to, and maybe he didn't finish it yet, and it starts from another kibbutz. It's different. It's the yom from birurim. So what did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said, however, his father-in-law said that the Birurim have been completed. Since the Birurim have been completed, then the Avodah becomes something else. If we're no longer to be busy with the Birurim, then what are we, as it were, what are we supposed to be doing? So the answer is, you're supposed to just be going up and up, like the moon, and your whole aim is just to unite back with the Mashpia until you'll become so bottled that you'll become like him. Yisrael v'kutshu b'richu kulachad. So what's that got to do with it? Yaakov Avinu, the Medrash says that when Yaakov Avinu said to Esau, "Vayihili shoyer v'chamoyer," that's referring to Moshiach. Shoyer is Moshiach ben Yosef, and chamoyer is Moshiach ben David. Because by Yosef it's written B'cher shoyer hadar loi in the brachas. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu. It's written B'cher shoyer hadar loi. And that's Yosef, and by Mashiach it's written only v'reichav al chamoyer. He's going to be like Paul. He's going to ride on a donkey. As he paid chamoyer represents Mashiach ben David. So Yaakov Avinu by Laban, Yaakov Avinu went through all the birurim, as it were, that could possibly be done by a tzaddik of his greatness. So he said, "In Cain, as far as I'm concerned, we're holding by Mashiach. We've finished all the Birurim." And he sent to Esau, because the Goyim have also got to come to the ball game. And so he wanted, he's saying, "Look, I'm holding now by Mashiach. Why? Because I've completed all that I had to do. Then I've got all the madrigas. All we have to do now is just unite back with the Eibusher in a way that we're not busy anymore with the bad and the good. We're just going up and up to join up and form the ultimate union of Hoya Halavana Ke'erachama." That's what he said to Esau. According to Chassidus, so he's sending Esau a pretty elevated message.
But it failed.
So what did the angels? By the way, one of them was according to the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital, one of them was Eliyahu. Yeah, Pinchas Eliyahu. Pinchas Eliyahu. One of them was Eliyahu. Eliyahu wasn't born yet. But Yaakov Avinu was into Malachim. He sort of knew what was going on with the Malachim. So he chose out of the library of the Malachim the Neshama of Eliyahu, and he made it into what he needed at that particular moment. Even though Eliyahu, as they state from the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital. Anyway, Yaakov Avinu was into it. He says over there to Esau, and the Malachim come back and they say, "Listen,
Sending 400 men.
You'll take a holy better over this guy."
Yeah.
So then Yaakov Avinu saw that there was still, a lot of birurim were left. But he left a rosham, how do you call it, in the world, that he was ready for this union, which means that if you link up with Yaakov Avinu and you do things Yaakov Avinu's way, then you're heading for the union of the Mashpia and the Makabel, ultimately to the whole parsha is like a Messina square for the preparation for the coming Messiah. So the Rebbe said, for some reason which don't quite know, it's taken a long time. It took a lot more than what didn't calculate it. Taken a long time. But the greatness of the Frierdiker Rebbe is that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, whatever that to take, it's already been taken. Finished. Now we've got Shur v'chamoyer kipshutei, and we're going only up. We've been Messiah all the Birurim, just like Yaakov Avinu wanted. And the truth is that Yaakov Avinu never gave up on the idea. There's all sorts of different proofs that I could bring you from different places and consider that Yaakov Avinu held right up to the end. That it's still possible to bring Mashiach, even in those days. Yeah. In other words, Yaakov Avinu was a mishkist. he was a big time mishkist. Of a Mela, that's where we're holding. Everything's been completed. and we're holding out by the union of the Levana and the Son, in a way that they all become one thing, of Melekesser Echad, Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'atzmei L'Shneihem. Of Amela said to Rebbe, it's a whole new form of Aveda, and it's a whole new recognition of what the world's holding. So the Rebbe said that's why, if you look at the world, you can see all sorts of amazing things are happening. That was Toshin on Bay. And the Rebbe brings the whole thing at the end of the Sikh about France, about Tzarfas. And he says that Tzarfas is Begematria Ufaratsta. And the Rebbe gives a whole beer how in history, Tzarfas is not such a good place. And before the revolution, Bavadai wasn't good. Bashas, the revolution was just absolutely barbaric and terrible. And then afterwards you had Bonaparte, what's his name, Napoleon and Soros and all sorts of miser. So the Rebbe said that Tzarfas is a very difficult, therefore it's from the word Tzoref, Tzarfas. And Tzoref means to smithy something, to heat it and get out all the rubbish by heat. So the Rebbe said it's been a hard go, Tzarfas. He said each of the Rebbeim paid very special. The Rebbe Rashab used to go especially on holiday to Menton, which is in Tzarfas. And that's where the whole Hampshire of Ayin Beis, that's where he began seeing in his mind the whole Hampshire of the Ayin Beis. It's well known. You do it before, when he was on a holiday. And so he came back from the holiday in Menton, and he said to one of the elder Chassidim that they came out to greet the Rebbe in the name of all the Chassidim. The Rebbe Rashab said that there's a new Indian Chassidim came into my mind when I was in. It's nishchadish geworden bei mir a neue Indian and Chassidim. So the Mashpeh said, no, maybe we can hear. So the Rebbe Rashab said, we will talk. And we will talk it's 6 years at the Hampshire of Einbeck. Yeah, so that was Tzarfas. You follow? So the Rebbe says, the perfection of the Bureau of Tzarfas has taken Dafki place. And what the Rebbe is saying under his leadership. And therefore you got all the shluchim over there, and then I don't know if you were over by the Rebbe, a few Tishrei when all the guys came over from Tzarfas. They just turned the whole 730, all these, young French guys, all of them coming back.
Still now.
In different stages.
Still now.
It's, I was there quite a few occasions, and how the Rebbe used to be Makar, all these guys from Tzarfas. So the Rebbe says that that's like the final finish of what had to be done. And now Tzarfas has already been ufaratsta, so the Rebbe, now we can go and join up with the sun and everything. Everything's been finished. I call Muhammad of Amela, now the moon and the sun are getting together, and that's the sign of Yutes Kislev sets that whole direction. And Hanukkah is like a further step in that direction. Of Amela, Teicham Yad Mamish. That's what we're holding by. So that's basically a picture of what the Sikha tells us. And it's just absolutely, mind-shaking and mind-boggling how the Rebbe develops on this whole principle that the going down of the light of the moon is really the approach to absolute union with the Mashpia. And that, albeit that idea and that picture occurs both in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe and in Maimorim of the Rebbe Rashab, over this whole idea that they unite together and become one. And it's just like an unbelievable development, It's just, you see the unbelievable tour of the river. It's just mind shaking, you know. And so there we are, guys. And so that's where we're holding. So if that's where we're holding, so that's where we're going. And Hashem Shalom. And so Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to a very wonderful chasna of Pinchas Eliyahu and his wife. So that means, you know, the union of Zohar and Akeva and a binyan adiyad, that's a preparation for the binyan adiyad at the Beis HaMikdash. Take it me out, one hemshah. And so it should be with tremendous applause.
Amen. I heard you was visiting exotic places. I heard you was visiting exotic places in the UK. Leeds.
I would have been able to help you anyway.
I was there.
Are you
I missed you by 2 days. I was in Manchester for Bar Mitzvah. I was on the way back from New York. I know, I missed it by 2 days.
You missed it by 2 days. You're a button. Well, I have several of my old commitment.
And Leeds.
Yeah.
And Leeds.
Who's that?
Leeds as well.
Yeah, that's why I was in there. Yeah, Rabbi Galfi, and then you got to the Reuben Cohen. These guys that sell it.
חיים, Rabbi Gafni.
Chaim.
מזל טוב.
We learn each Thursday night.
I know.
We learn there.
I gave my Yitzhak Hara a night off tonight.
So now you. So maybe you can sort of chapel and all the time. Yeah, they could. It's written by Yivrach Yaakov. Yeah. There we are. So we got a bit of mazain to say.
Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'le'olam. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'le'olam.
Amen. See the time.
Chaim.
Half asleep. Okay. Gente.
הסימן שהתקרבנו למשפיע, לחושן. Darkness, it's seeming we're closer to the Mashpia.
Hang the ball.
So, just when I get to Yudalit Kislev itself, to the actual chasna, it was in the year Tofresh Peites in Warsaw. It's one on the chuppah was in the chutz of Yeshiva Tom Hetman, the Friedrich Rebbe wanted that should be mamish in the and it's one on at the Maimah Chodeidi, which the Chasanim annoyed, and you also gave over in English. Well, that was said by the Friedrich Rebbe before the chuppah, and that was like his invitation to all the Rebbeim, is one on. That Maimah is built together from quotes from all the Rebbeim. Yeah, including the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, the Alter, everybody. Yeah, it's all sort of how do you call it? Needed, K-N-E-A-D, needed all together. And that was the way of the Rebbe inviting all the Rebbeim to come to the chasna.
The Friedrich Rebbe said the Maimah? The Friedrich Rebbe said the Maimah?
Yeah, not the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe.
Was that the first time it was used by a chasna? Was it the first time it was used by a chasna?
It was ever said by a chasna.
Or was it the first time?
Yeah, yeah. And then there was all the other Maimarim during the Sheva Bracha, and they're called the Maimari Chasna. They were all said by the Friedrich Rebbe in connection with the Sheva Shemaya Mishta, the Rebbe. Yeah. So during the actual chuppah, or that was when, as it were, the Friedrich Rebbe saw all the Rebbeim as being present, yeah. And then afterwards, there was a break, and then the Suda was eaten in a hall not far from where there was the yeshiva, but it wasn't in the yeshiva. So the Rebbe was sitting at the table, and for most of the Suda, he just sat there very quietly. But a lot of the Admuri, Poland, and the Gedele Hatera of Poland, pre-war Poland, they came to give their Mazel their respect at the wedding. So the Friedrich Rebbe spent a lot of time, and that's become the custom by a Suda's Chasna in Chabad, that the Friedrich Rebbe had a bottle of vodka, not whiskey, vodka. He had a bottle of vodka, and he went around to all the people who were at the Chasna, and he was mechabed them himself. He had to say the Chaim. And it took him quite a bit of time to go around. He was anxious that every guest would say the Chaim, yeah. So it took him quite a bit of time. So during that time, some of these big Gedele Hatera that had come to give their Mazel Tov, they took the opportunity to have a word with the Rebbe. So the Rebbe was, and of course they wanted, the Rebbe wasn't well known at that stage, and he was a young fellow from Russia, and he was the sort of, they'd heard of the Rebbe Levitzchasnism, but they didn't know him. He was in Russia, never. So they wanted to find out what sort of guy did the Friedrich Rebbe, Chab, who is this young man? So the Rebbe was sitting, and the Rebbe spoke with great calmness and derech to each of these people that came up to him. So there was a big Gaon at that time. He wasn't from the Chassidim, but he wasn't Davke from the Misnagdim, but he was a big Gaon. The Rebbe Menachem Jemba was his name. And he was considered like one of the Gaonim, Shebekol Poilin at that time. You know, he wrote Shalas and Chuvas, and he was Boki B'Shas, you know, Pesachim, Yerushalmi. He was quite a figure. So he went up to the Rebbe. He saw the Rebbe sitting quietly, so he took the opportunity and he got the Rebbe into conversation. So he trying the Rebbe with a few well-known questions in certain issues, you know, in the Gemara. And to his amazing, the Rebbe just very quietly gave him very, you know, profound answers to these questions in Shas, you know, in the Gemara and the Meforshe Gemara. And you know, he was quite dumbfounded. The Rebbe just sitting very quietly and sort of, you know, being very self-effacing. All of a sudden the Rebbe just, you know, answered him off cuff, you know, in these issues. So, you know, he was quite surprised. So he tried again with something else, and the Rebbe, you know, very quietly, modestly answered him. So he was very. In the end, he ended up having a whole conversation with the Rebbe, and at the completion of the conversation, he said to the Rebbe that he has to take his leave now. He's sorry, he's got to leave, and so he shook the Rebbe's hand very warmly, and he left. And on his way out, he intercepted Friedrich Rebbe, who was still going around giving people, you know, from his bottle of vodka, being mechab people with brachas. There were people clapped around the Friedrich Rebbe, he gave out his brachas. So the Rabbi Menachem Shemba, he said to the Friedrich Rebbe, he took the Friedrich Rebbe aside for a second, and he said, Lubavitcher Rebbe, that's what he said. He said, listen, Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said, Yet genommen a Goan Olam als Eidim. He said, you've taken a Goan Olam for your son-in-law. Yeah. So the people would have thought that Friedrich would say, oh, yeah, what do you say? Wow, that's amazing. Friedrich Rebbe just sort of nodded and said, yes, I don't know. I'd say, you know, you're telling me. You know? Yeah. So, you know, the greatest sort of figure in Nigla in Poland at the time, or at least amongst the greatest of all the figures, he went away from the Rebbe very, very moved and very impressed. And there were also others from the big Admoirim and that they went up, and just from the few brief words that they had with the Rebbe, they were very warmly affected. And they took a very big sort of notice of the whole approach of the Rebbe, you know, his way of calmly and yet very derech eretz, and very nicely answering what they proposed, questions and things like that. And that was like a setting of tone for all that was going to happen in all the years to come. That was the Rebbe all the years, you know, calm and yet tremendous hold-out ability, you know, to hold out and to continue. And at the same time, everything was calm and very warm-hearted and very meaningful. And that's like the picture that occurred, you know. So it was, that's the impression that the Rebbe left on everybody, that it was a Chasna. And that he just sat very, you know, self-effacingly in his place. And he didn't move, you know, he didn't go around talking to everybody. The Rebbe just sat, you know, with great modesty in his place. And these people came up to the Rebbe. They came, as it were, looking for him. And it was really very, very mind-boggling. So Hashem should know that we've got to realize that, you know, The river is the river. And it's not just stone, that all these wondrous sikhas and all this stuff, the netutes were all beginning to appear way back. Years and years and years ago, long before the Rebbe actually took over the Nasiyas, the sparks and the greatness was already breaking through and expressing itself. So that's what the Rebbe said about Yud Dalet Kislev, that the Rebbe said that this day is the beginning of my connection with you, meaning all the Chassidim. If it hadn't been for the Yud Dalet Kislev, the whole connection wouldn't have begun. So the Rebbe said that the significance of Yud Dalet Kislev is that it's the beginning of my connection with you. That's what the Rebbe said to the whole.
With the words Ani Kadeshet Li, when he said the words Ani Kadeshet Li, that when I take you, I take all the Chassidim.
He said when he said yeah, okay.
Right. It's like the beginning of the whole amazing and unbelievable development and unfathomable greatness of the development all began on this day, and Yud Dalet, or that's not tonight, the Shabbat of it. That is Mamela. Yud Dalet Kislev is a very amazing day. It really is. It's a very key day in the sense that this whole amazing Gilui of Melech Moshiach began becoming possible. Just imagine that. It's like the beginning of Malchus HaMashiach, Kipshutei. And that's what Yaakov said, Vayili Shoyer V'chamoyer. I've got it all ready, it's all there. It's all that's going to come out. And that's what the Menachem said. He was a great Gaon, that he picked up that something very unusual is occurring here. It's not something arogio, beklam. Well, guys, we're going to realize that the Rebbe has given us everything. Everything is there. Everything is being prepared. All we got to do, open our eyes right now. And actually, that occurs, that expression in this sikh also, the several sikh. The Rebbe also, right near the end, he says, what he do is open your eyes. Somebody, I was davening in the yeshiva this morning. I already finished davening, it was already quite late, and there was a guy there, and very nice person, and he came up to me and he said, listen, he said, it's a bit too much of a drag, we need to speed things up, we need to get Moshiach B'Poya. So he said, how are we going to do it? What is lacking? What haven't we done so far? So I thought that, I was very moved. I could see that he meant it. He wasn't just trying to be, hail fellow, well met. He wasn't just trying to take a shot at me. He meant, he meant it. So what occurred to me? So I said to him, there's two things. I said, first of all, we all have to be brothers. We're all going to be ba'achtas. We got to, break this whole dichotomy business. We're going to be all of us together, achtas. And we're going to be poyel, Laman said, not just talk about it, but poyel, to feel the kesher with everybody. That's number one. I said the second thing is simcha. We have to be the simcha. No matter what the situation and what's going on. That's what we learned last night in Yisrael. We learned in the Shir in Eter, we started learning a Maimon in Eter. But the Rebbe said over there that simcha is another inyan. You have moichen, you have midas, and you have all sorts of good sachen, and then you have simcha. And simcha is a inyan atzmi. It's like an essential, very powerful thing that's sort of not midas and it's not moichen, but it's a tremendous. And the Torah says, because you didn't have that, that's why I got angry with you. That's what it appeared. I said to him, we have to have those two things. We have to have actors, we have to be besimcha. And we have to be besimcha, despite all the Allah that everybody's got reasons maybe to catch up in and to be upset, and all of us have got problems in the we have to be besimcha. And simcha is an aveda. That's what's written. That the Rebbe says that simcha is a very big aveda. And if you have simcha, then you come to what's called re'iyah, you see things. And it's amazing, I was telling Yishai that lately, whatever I learn in Chassidus, wherever I turn, I meet up with the sin from re'iyah. I keep meeting it the whole time. Re'iyah. That the whole of Chassidus is to see Elkud. You could actually see. And that's what the Alter Rebbe and the whole movement of Chabad and it's just so unbelievably profound. And the Shara Yichud V'Amunah, all the amazing things in Tanya, and all the amazing doctrines, they all lead to that point that if you only look, and that's what the Rebbe means, you got to sort of open your eyes, If you just look through the right directives, then you see, you can actually see. Chusha Re'iyah. And so Chusha Re'iyah doesn't just mean, the seichel being very convinced. It does in a way, but that's not enough. Since the Rebbeim, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe used the expression Re'iyah Chushir in Perikov seeing with the naked eye, Re'iyah Chushir. And he doesn't say that really means this and that. He just says Re'iyah Chushir, and that's it. And then Bekama Makamas is brought down, said it, the same thing, Re'iyah Chushir. So I asked you, what is a pshat Re'iyah Chushir? How would you ask a Ben Chomish, what would he say as the pshat Re'iyah Chushir? It's everything. So we get and so it's much more over there that Re'iyah Chushir and Simcha are sort of linked together. It's a little bit hard. Either the Re'iyah Chushir produces the Simcha, or the Simcha produces the Re'iyah Chushir. It's sort of like, it's both things are true. It's like one of these things that it sort of goes around an amazing sort of a circle. It never really starts at any given point, but everything's important. This is important. That's important. So the Re'iyah and the Simcha are all linked together. And that's what we have to try and realize, that mamish, if we just look at what is happening, it's just mind-boggling what's going on. Even though, the world is an absolute terrible mess when you just look at it first time. But if you just look, a bit closer, you can see an unbelievable nissim and all sorts of amazing, mind-boggling things are happening. And they're happening both in a massive general way in the whole world, and they're happening individually also. Despite what might appear to be painful things that each and every one of us got in his life, things that cause him pain and upset, but nonetheless, if you look closely, you can see unbelievable divine control, And even in the thing which appears to be upsetting you, you gotta be moide ala emes, even if you don't really understand or want to understand. You have to be moide ala emes. That's the gamzula teva. That's also good. And ultimately, it's gonna show itself what it really is, even though it might not appear at first glance what it is. And we see this sort of thing happening all over, It's just absolutely mind-boggling. I got an email from a guy that he's a non-Jew, and he wrote me a whole thing that he started becoming bothered by the fact, why isn't he keeping the mitzvah? So he's considering the whole idea of becoming a ger, but he hasn't finally made the step yet, but he's got this thought. He said, all of a sudden he's troubled tremendously, and he went to visit Auschwitz. He went to the terrible place of Auschwitz, and he said that he was so unbelievably affected by the whole thing that he broke off a little piece of brick from one of the walls of the terrible place where somebody hadn't passed away. He broke off a little bit and he put it in his pocket. And he said ever since he put that piece of brick in his pocket, he has no spiritual rest. He said he just the whole time he feels that he must, do something. He's got to, he can't just go on the way it is. Isn't that amazing? So, I mean, it just shows you that all sorts of amazing things are happening. And the Mittler Rebbe, this week was the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe says that according to the Arizal, your Yechida Shebanefesh is shared to your body, but it's not actually in your body, it's in your whole Daladamas. The whole 4 cubits around you, that's where your Yechida is. It's sort of, it's when you move, the whole Yechida moves with you. All your 4 cubits move at the same time. So the Mittler Rebbe says that a person, a Yid, sometimes walks down a street in a Goyshe village, and all of a sudden he says to him, what am I doing here? What am I doing walking down this crazy village? I don't really belong here. Yidden don't belong here. So the answer is, Ein noch aname. But the fact that you are walking down there, you see only the negative side of it. He said your Yechida Shebanefesh is fixing up all sorts of inyanim in the air around you. All sorts of negative influences are being fixed by your Yechida Shebanefesh. As they bring the middle. So isn't that amazing? And so he says, Hu choshev shuhu alach l'sham biglal kach v'kach. He went over there for this and this reason. But really, Hashem moved him with his Yechida Shebanefesh, and the Yechida Shebanefesh has got ways of doing things. You don't know what's going on, because it's not movable inside you, and yet it's not outside you either. It's sort of like shy to you. And it's, it's doing all sorts of amazing things, and you don't even know about it. That's what he brings there, the Mittler Rebbe. At the end of the Atavech Rishim, it's a very famous mimer that he said just a few days before his talk. Famous mimer, And he writes a whole thing about Yechida. And he says, even Shabbos is also Yechida. And he said, if a Yid would just sit the whole Shabbos and not do anything, he said, not pray and not do anything, but just not do any malachas, or not do anything like you do, then his Yechida Shebanefesh is hooking up to Shabbos. And he says, it could be that through that Shabbos, something is happening to him, and it'll take time to be apparent what it actually was. Even if he just sat on an easy chair and did nothing all Shabbos, it didn't daven, he didn't say Christmas, or he didn't do the Heper, then his Yechida, well, that's a Madrig of Shabbos, is looking after the deal. As he said, a bit little. That's what he said. Mind-boggling. Well, how's the old saying have it? You can never tell. You don't know what is going on. We don't know what we're doing or what's happening around here. As the old saying have it, is my medler. leave it up to him, you know. Just be honest with yourself. And admit that you don't know what's really coming up. But your Yechidashim Nefesh is looking out to things that you have no direct appreciation, but the Emunah Shlema tells me that you're achieving something. And that's very, encouraging to people who say, oh, who am I? Anyway, I've got nothing to do and I can't do anything. And it's the very fact that you're a Yid and you have this Yechidah, you're doing something. And you're achieving. You just have to have Emunah Shlema that that's in effect what's occurring. That's the whole inyan. So you have to be v'simcha. So that's what I said to this guy this morning. I said, if we'll be v'aktas and we'll be v'simcha, then hopefully we got it. You understand? And that'll help you. As I state in Etta, that will make you have re'iyah. Well, that means that your eyes will be open.
Is it helpful to have? Is it helpful to have a well-developed sense of imagination?
Yeah?
Is it helpful to have a very well-developed sense of imagination?
I'm sorry I didn't catch it. I really apologize. Your voice is very soft.
Is it helpful to have a very well-developed sense of imagination?
Listen, I wouldn't say that it's the opposite of helping. If I know? Because everything by a Yid is mitzadish nefesh elokis, be'emes. The nefesh elokis is just a trial that's put in his body, but the real existence of a Yid is his nefesh elokis. I say it's brought down in Kama. So if you imagine something, then we have to assume that's, unless it's just obvious that you've fallen deeply into the hands of your nefesh elokis, then we have to assume that your nefesh elokis is putting you this picture or this imagery. So we have to assume, that's like the old saying in English, if you don't dream, then you'll never get anywhere. You know, you have to picture things in your mind, and then you get things done. Otherwise,
thank you.
Otherwise, nothing happens. So, to a certain extent, you know, within certain boundaries, without going obviously into the hands of the nefesh elokis, then I would say that you have a good point. You follow? And you have to have a picturing power in your mind. I would say it's even a very necessary thing. You follow? Otherwise, you know, and that's one of the whole things of his bonus, you know. You learn about a certain thing, then you have to be able to picture it. What does this really mean in my life and in the world? How do I now experience the world in the light of that what I understood? So his bonus means that I sort of look at it as if that's the way it was. You follow? Once again, we come back to looking. So the ultimate message of Chassidus is that's got to become your real chut. You understand? You actually have to see that. It's not enough just to be aware of it, you know, but you got to actually see it. And it's mind-blowing. I keep meeting up with this whole theme, and I must say that it really gets me. And that's what we see at the end of the Sikha. The Rebbe says what you said. The Rebbe said you have to, you know, change your whole Riyah. Right? And so if all that the Rebbe tells us the whole Aveda now is to approach the oneness with him must be, not just to be together with him, but to be like him and one with him, then l'chora, things are changing, you know. And that means that you can see what you wouldn't have seen 15, 20 years ago. You know? Now you can't. You can see it. It becomes possible. And that's the koyach of the river. And that's the koyach that the Rebbe's given the Klal Yisrael, that if you only look, you'll see it. You understand? You have to. And that's the idea of Re'iyah. Yeah, it's a very amazing idea. It's mind-blowing. And Yesh Lama, that's what the Baal Shem Tov wanted. You know, that was the whole switch and the whole alteration that the Baal Shem Tov made. And he said there's not a Hashem and the world, and Hashem just looks after the world. But the world and Hashem are all one thing. we're all part of Hashem. We're all bottom in Him. And therefore, it's a whole different ballgame. You know, we're all void inside Hashem. And yet, nonetheless, He wants us, mitzad ratzoinei, for a certain reason, He wants us to be there. And therefore, He made us Sfiras HaMalchus, you understand? And Sfiras HaMalchus plays this whole amazing, game. On the one hand, it's part of Atzilus, nothing. Ein oid milvad, nothing apart from Him. On the other hand, it plays, for us, it plays this game, a kilu that we're there. You follow? A kilu, we can do something. So I said, you can do something. Then get moving, you know. But it's all inside this amazing, what you might call ball game, this amazing, that really you're not there. You're only there because Hashem wants there to be this amazing challenge. And He wanted it, and the Rebbe Hashem says, why He wanted it, we don't know. We don't know why He wanted it, but that's what He wanted, you know? And that's the Baal Shem Tov. The other great teachers, and they were great teachers, the Mishnah Chassidim and the other great Mekubalim, they said it's like two, the Hashem, and the world. And Einach Hanami, Hashem looks after the world, but He and the world are like two separate things. He created it, and He looks after it, but He's separate. And he withdrew from the world, on the contrary. He didn't want to be part of it. The Baal Shem said, Chas v'sholem, it's all Him, you understand? Everything. It's all Him. And we're only like a continuation of Hashem, in a way. It's just there for a reason. And so when you think of it, it's much easier to think that other way. To take on what the Baal Shem Tov said, that we're all part of Hashem, He's everything, that we're nothing absolute, we don't exist. Yet we do, and how do we exist in Canaan? Where do we get Bechira Chopshis from? That was just it's an amazing, unbelievable headache. And yet that's what the Baal Shem Tov, that was his teaching. And that's the whole, the Tanya, that's the Sefer Tanya, that the Alter Rebbe wanted to make real. That's why he says at the beginning, what he heard from his teacher. That's the whole thing. The Alter Rebbe wanted to systemize what they told him.
You said the Alter Rebbe was also imprisoned on Hanukkah. How long after the Yud Tes Kislev? The same year, or how long after?
I think it was only about 2 years, or 3 years. Not very long at all. It was actually like a follow-up.
How long was he?
The second time he was a few weeks, but he wasn't actually in prison. He was like in a house arrest. He was under guard, but he was able to move around inside a house. And it was very, very sharp.
It was
sharp. In some ways, even sharper in the actual content of what they were trying to get at than in Yud Tes Kislev. Very, very powerful. And that's what the Rebbe says in the Sikha. He got out on Hanukkah. First time Yud Tes Kislev, then the second time even more. And that was the final victory. It was Hanukkah, and in Hanukkah, the 5th day of Hanukkah. So the mom is moving right to the end of the month. So I was what's going on here? I don't know, that's the Mashpia and the Makabel becoming one. Not that one is like the Mashpia and the other is a Makabel. They're becoming one. Oh. Amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
No, too. There's the old saying, you know, you have to thank the Rebbe. Oh, hey, do we have to thank the Rebbe? Yeah. And the Rebbe's fingers are in all the pies. You know, you heard the expression in English. There's not any pie that is baking anywhere in the world that the Rebbe doesn't have a finger inside the pie. And when does it all start? You have this very modest but tremendously, unbelievably learned young man sitting at the Chasna, and all these great people are filing up to him and getting, they're going away with this amazing. That's where it all began. And gradually the figures have gone out, and all the pies all have the Rebbe's figure. Oh. As the old saying, Herbert, you mark my words.
Did you daven Mariv? You daven Mariv?
Do I have a
Did you
knife?
daven Mariv?
Yeah, I already done. I think the guys,
Daven?
you haven't done mine, yeah? So, as the old saying, you can go ahead.